Coming up on this episode of the Metal Command podcast, Helloween has a brand new single out called This Is Tokyo. Nuclear Blast decides to leave the platform called X, also known as Twitter. I talk about why I think the Dave Mustaine and Metallica narrative has just gotten played out and old, and why I'm sick of hearing about it. And I review the new A through Z album called A through Z2. All of that coming up next here on the Metal Command podcast.
You are listening to the Metal Command podcast.
Greetings and welcome back to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. Tony here with you. Really excited, of course, to be here with everybody today. And, of course, I have a lot to talk about with all of you. But first, if you do want to support the program and support the show, by all means, hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell to be notified anytime I do post any kind of content. If you follow this show on any other form of social media or streaming service, please give it a like, follow, or subscribe there. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about what I'm discussing today. And what I'm discussing today are 4 topics. Let's talk about what they are. First of all, I'm going to talk about why I think the Dave Mustaine and Metallica narrative has just gotten old and played out, and why I'm sick of hearing about it after all these years. I'm going to review the A through Z album, the new album, A through Z2, which features great musicians like Ray Alder, Mark Zonder, Nick Van Dyke. Lots of great musicians on that album. And, of course, many of you may have seen the interview I did with those guys. Just a phenomenal record. I have it sitting right here in front of me. I'm going to talk about why Nuclear Blast left the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, of course. And it may not be for the reasons all of you might think, because a lot of people are jumping to conclusions as to why they left that platform. But let's get into the topic you all know that I want to talk about. My favorite band of all time, Helloween, releasing a brand new single called This Is Tokyo. This is the first single off of the album that comes out on August 29th. That album, of course, is called Giants and Monsters. The album cover, of course, is out there and has been revealed, as is the track listing, and they finally released a single off of this album. And I will put that single in the show notes so you guys can listen to it if you have not heard it. Now, I have a few thoughts, and I'm going to talk about some of the reactions. So the reaction to this track has been mostly positive. A lot of people like the song. I would say about 80-85% of the people dig the track. There are some naysayers out there that do not like it. And the biggest comment I have heard from people is that they're unhappy that the band didn't release like a long, epic power metal song like they did on the self-titled album, Skyfall. And there was some disappointment from a few people. So I'm going to discuss that. And I'm also going to discuss the song and the meaning behind it. So when you go to the track, there is a quote from Andy Darris. I'm going to read it here. He puts for the song This Is Tokyo, I've always wanted to write this song. Japan plays a very special role in my life because I had my first #1 there with Pink Cream 69, and they always treated me incredibly well. I wanted to set a monument to Japan and finally had the right idea for the lyrics because Tokyo is catchier than Japan. The city in this song stands for the whole country, and that is very important to me. Okay, so let's discuss the song first and his quote. And I can understand his quote from many different angles. The biggest one, of course, besides Japanese people being wonderful people, because I do deal with them quite a bit, when it comes to my photography and buying photography gear. The Japanese market, let's be honest, folks, is probably one of, if not the most consistent market for Helloween. When it comes to supporting a band like Helloween, and not just Helloween, but heavy metal and hard rock in general. And what I mean by consistent is that despite trends in other countries, the Japanese market has always been very highly supportive of this genre of music, of heavy metal and hard rock, despite what trends are going on in other countries. So the Japanese market, of course, was, big with hard rock and heavy metal, at least since the 70s, right? And despite how big or small heavy metal may or may not be in other countries, Helloween has always had a very good, very viable, very consistent market in Japan. They supported the band throughout the heyday of metal in the 1980s. They supported the band during the dark ages of heavy metal, where, metal really wasn't big really anywhere else, but Japan was still carrying the flag and the torch throughout the 90s, throughout the grunge years. And in general, throughout the entire 40-year history of Helloween, this market has been the most consistent. It is a very passionate fan base, folks. I can tell you, when I ran the band's website in the late 90s through the mid 2000s, I talked to so many Japanese fans, and that support, I can tell you, is no joke. They legit love this band and have always supported not only Helloween, but hard rock and heavy metal music in general. And if you want to expand that a little bit, this market, of course, supported Gamma Ray through the 1990s. Obviously, Kai Hansen's other band. Michael Kiske solo albums always had very strong Japanese support. So what I'm saying is that it makes a lot of sense to write a song like this. And Andy talks about, and I don't know what he meant by number one with Pink Cream 69. I'm not sure if it was an album or a single, but generally speaking, much of the early success and the first real success that he had, I believe, the biggest success early on in Andy's career was Japan. And actually, many bands out there in the heavy metal genre find their biggest early successes in the Japanese market. Now, the song itself I think is very good. It's more in the straight ahead hard rock style. More, it has a little bit of that Pink Cream 69 vibe to it. Now, I don't know if that was intentional as a tribute to the Japanese market, that Andy said, you know what? My first number one single or album was in Japan. Let me write something similar to what I did in Pink Cream, or at least in that style. But regardless of whether that was the intention or not, that is how this song came out. And I think the song is very, very good. It's just a straight ahead hard rock song. I think it's catchy. It's got a great chorus, great guitar solo. I think the song is great. And it makes sense to release it as the first single, because that first single is going to get a ton of exposure. And if you're going to say thank you to a fan base that has always consistently supported you throughout your entire career, from the very beginning through now, you want to make the big splash to pay tribute to them, and I don't blame him for doing that at all. I deal with Japanese people. For those of you that don't know, I do a lot of photography, and I buy a lot of vintage camera gear from a couple stores in Japan. And honestly, Japanese people are wonderful people. I've been interacting and doing business with people in Japan for a quarter of a century now. Over a quarter of a century. So I think it's a fitting tribute because, one, your first number one anything was in Japan, and I'm talking about from Andy's perspective. So you write a song in the style of your first band, the band you were in before Helloween, put it on a Helloween album, and you're basically paying tribute to a fan base that has supported your career despite what band you have been in, regardless of whatever band you've been in. I think that's awesome. I'd give the song about a 9 out of 10. It's definitely one of Andy Darris's better, more straight-ahead hard rock songs. And that leads me to the next aspect of this. The naysayers that are upset that Helloween's first single wasn't some long, epic power metal track. if you remember, on the self-titled album, they put Skyfall out. Skyfall's like 9, close to about a 10-minute song almost. People went nuts. And people now are like angry. Not everybody, but some people are like pissed they didn't do this. Folks, first of all, let me just say that Skyfall is kind of an anomaly as far as putting out a single, because the band typically does not put out long, epic power metal songs as a single for their album. In fact, more often than not, the songs they put out as singles are straight ahead rock songs, just like This Is Tokyo. I was actually shocked when Skyfall came out. I'm like, oh, wow, they put like this long, epic Kai Hansen composition out as the first song. Now, they might have done that because of Kai coming back to the band. I don't know what led to that decision. All I know is I own like 12 copies of that single on different vinyl variants. But as a matter of history, and a lot of people seem to have a short memory, the band typically doesn't release songs like that as singles. So if you want some examples, let's go back to the Keeper era. Start with Keeper 2. My favorite songs on Keeper 2: Eagle Fly Free, Keeper of the Seven Keys, March of Time. Folks, those are among not only fan favorites, but they are my favorites. And none of those songs were singles. The singles they picked off of Keeper 2 were the more straight-ahead rock songs like Dr. Stein and I Want Out. You go back to Keeper 1. They had technically had two singles. But Future World, which is the most straight-ahead rock song on Keeper 1, was the single for the album. Now, they did release Helloween, probably more for MTV purposes, where they edited out like 2/3 of the song. There is a picture disc shaped vinyl with that 5-minute version of Helloween. I actually own it. But they did put that song out as a single, technically for MTV mainly. But like there was no, aside from that like cutaway picture disc, I don't know of any other format. I don't believe there is one. But Future World, the most straight ahead rock song, that was the single for Keeper 1. And if you go back and look at all of their albums in general, as a matter of history, almost always they've put straight ahead rock songs out, not the epic power metal songs. Let's go to, for example, My God-Given Right, the album before the self-titled. Lost in America, My God-Given Right, the title track, both singles, both more straight-ahead rock tracks. They didn't put You, This Is War, any of the songs Wyke wrote, aside from Battles Won, which, it's kind of an epic power metal song. But generally speaking, 2 out of the 3 singles were straight-ahead rock songs. You look at Better Than Raw. What were the 2 singles? Hey Lord and I Can, both straight-ahead rock songs. You look at Time of the Oath. The first single they put out was Power, a more straight-ahead rock song. Time of the Oath itself, the title track, was more of like this, almost sounded kind of like a doom metal type track a little bit. And, of course, you had Forever and One, which is more of like kind of a ballad. We take a look at, Seven Sinners, right? That album had Are You Metal? And there were quite a few epic power metal songs on that album. Let's take Keeper of the Seven Keys, The Legacy. You have songs like King for 1,000 Years and Occasion Avenue. What did they pick? Mrs. God. I believe originally they were going to put the song Come Alive as the single, but I believe they decided against that. I have to remember there was an old press release where they put that out. But anyhow, Mrs. God was the single. So my point is, while I understand where everybody is coming from, and I'm sure some of the other tracks they put out probably will be more epic power metal songs, as a general rule, Helloween has always typically put out, more times than not, the straight-ahead rock song off of the album as either the first single or for all of the singles on the album. Now, they would put some of those epic tracks, let's say back in the days when you had CD singles for everything, they would probably put that as one of the other tracks on that CD single. Like, for example, Keeper of the Seven Keys, The Legacy, on the Mrs. God single, there was one format where they had King for 1,000 Years as one of the other songs on the album, aside from the bonus track, the B-side. So I'm sure those songs are coming. But it shouldn't surprise any of you that they decided to put a song like this out as the first single. So, folks, I'm extremely excited for this. There is a link in the show notes to pre-order the album. I put up the link from RPM, Rainy Phoenix Music's website, to give you a link to different places you can order it. If you want to get all the vinyl variants of the album, there's different places on that link page that will guide you and direct you there. But that is my take on This Is Tokyo by Helloween. Again, I like the song. It is a fitting tribute to a wonderful fan base that has always consistently supported heavy metal regardless of trends in other countries. And it was really cool to see Andy write a track like this. Now let's get to the next topic here. Nuclear Blast, the famed German record label, which was acquired by the French music company Believe, they have decided to leave X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. And for whatever reason, people are jumping to all of these assumptions. The biggest assumption people are making is that it's over politics. It's over Elon Musk owning Twitter and that they are outraged about it. These are comments people are making. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I know nobody at Nuclear Blast. I know one person that works there. I did not ask him about this, because personally, I don't care what their reasoning is. But if I had to guess what the reasoning is, folks, first of all, it's not politics. It has nothing to do with that. You know, a lot of people are saying, oh, Elon Musk and the salute that he made during a speech is why they left that platform. And I can tell you, if they were going to leave the platform, they would have done it right after he did that. So that is not it. In fact, I don't think it has anything to do with politics, and I think it has everything to do with the fact that X is a terrible platform to promote bands and musicians. Like, if you are a band or a musician and you want to promote yourself on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, the platform sucks. Let's be real. Now, if you want to bicker about politics and you want to watch celebrities throw temper tantrums, X is your place. That's the place to go. Generally speaking, I don't like the platform myself. This is why I do not have the show on that platform. And the biggest reason why Nuclear Blast would leave a platform like that is just the lack of traffic. Like, it's not a user-friendly platform for musicians. It really is not. Pretty much almost every PR person will tell you that you don't get the best. In fact, X is probably one of the worst places for musicians to gain traffic. If you want some examples, if you go and look at the different social media pages from your various bigger legacy metal bands, you look at the amount of followers and interactions they have on Facebook, for example, or you look at the interactions and following they have on YouTube, and then you go over to X, the traffic on X and the interactions is nowhere close to what it is on other platforms. And if you are a record label and the cost of doing business is a lot more than what it used to be and it's harder to earn money, you're going to put your resources where you are going to get more bang for your dollar. First of all, you can't hire a lot of staff, and you have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of staff. So you have to go to the place that gives you the most bang for the buck as far as time and money spent. Twitter, aka X, is definitely not that platform, and it hasn't ever really been that platform, even before Elon bought it. So no, folks, I don't think the label is woke. And trust me, folks, I'm not a big fan of wokeism to begin with, but the label's definitely not woke. Okay? They're not leaving it because of politics. They're leaving it because it's a very unviable platform to really heavily promote bands. You just don't get the traffic there. And if you are a PR person and you are watching this, you will understand and you know that this is the case. The bands just don't get the interactions and the traffic there. Like if you go to Twitter, aka X, and you look at the following a band has, many times the amount of reactions and interactions that bands get when they post stuff on there is nowhere close to the amount of followers they have. Whereas Facebook, the amount of interactions and views my posts get far exceed the following that my Facebook page has. And that is the case with practically every band out there. Not saying that's the case all the time, but that is the case for most bands out there. Now, somebody had pointed out and said, well, Nuclear Blast is doing this as a disservice to, the bands on the label because they have 200-some thousand followers on X. And they're screwing their fans out of those followers. Well, first of all, I guarantee you almost all of those 200,000 people are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. They're on all of these other platforms. And they probably interact more on those other platforms than X. I know for myself, I don't care for the platform. I'm on there. But I don't post anything. I don't do anything on it. I just don't like the way the platform is set up. And it's not really set up in a way that's musician and band and artist friendly. It's just not. Twitter is a place where people can complain and argue and bitch about politics, and celebrities can complain about stuff and go at each other on Twitter. And, if you follow like sports and stuff like that, it's a great platform for that. It's not for musicians and artists. It just isn't. So why waste your time and invest time in promoting something on a platform where you don't get anywhere close to the traffic you do on TikTok or Facebook or any of these other platforms? And that, I can guarantee you, is the reason, or at least the biggest reason, Nuclear Blast left X. And I would not be surprised if some of the other labels that Believe owns, if they follow suit. Now, obviously, if bands want to go on there and promote themselves, hell, they can do that. But the reality is, if you are a musician, X is definitely the platform that is not for you. Ask any PR person, ask any major band, they will tell you the same thing. Compared to many of the other platforms out there, X just doesn't get the traffic for artists. And that's really what it boils down to. I could be completely wrong, but having done this for close to 30 years, I can tell you that it is wasted time for Nuclear Blast or really any record label to even be on that platform or deal with it. And that's all I got on that topic. So I want to go into the break. Coming up next, I'm going to review the new A to Z album. And I'm going to talk about why I think the Dave Mustaine and Metallica narrative is old and it's played out and why I'm sick of hearing about it. All of that coming up next after this. Hey everybody, it's Tony here from the Metal Command Podcast. I appreciate you watching this program, and if you want to see more of what I offer on this show, please by all means hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, follow me on any other social media outlet that you see this program, and again, I appreciate all of your support. Okay, welcome back to the Metal Command Podcast. Tony back here with you. Let's discuss an album that I absolutely love. And that I've been very big on. And of course, this band just came on the program, A through Z. And They have a new album out called A through Z2. So for those of you that are not familiar with this band, I'll put a couple tracks in the show notes so you can check them out. But it features great musicians. Simone Maloney, who produced the album and mixed it. He's a phenomenal guitar player. Ray Alder, many of you know from Fate's Warning. Mark Zonder, many of you know from Warlord and Fate's Warning. Nick Van Dyke, as you may know from Redemption. Jimmy Waldo plays on this. Jimmy Waldo, of course, from Alcatraz. Just a great group of musicians playing on this album. Now, folks, if you go back throughout the history of the show, I have talked about A through Z. I talked about their first album, which I said was a perfect album. Perfect production, perfect songwriting. I mean, you just couldn't get any better than the first A through Z album. It doesn't get any better than their first album until the second album comes out, and it actually is better. So this is a great group. I think that when Mark formed this band, I don't know if he probably realized how magical a lot of this music would become, but this second A through Z album, I think, is better than the first. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. It is a little heavier. If you haven't checked out, if you've heard the first album but haven't heard much off the second, it's a little bit heavier. It is definitely, like I have said in a previous episode, it's like Journey on steroids. All the songs are well crafted. They are well written. The production is phenomenal. Everything about the album is amazing, including the merchandising, including some of the cool stuff like Mark Zonder selling bass drum heads and drum heads with the band autographing them with the album cover on the drum head. I mean, everything about this is phenomenal. The one thing that jumped out on me on this record, before anything, aside from the songwriting, is the vibe of this album is so much different than the previous album. And the vibe is much better. It has a different feel to it. And to further elaborate on that, I had Nick Van Dyke and Mark Zonder on my show, and we talked about this. Check out this interview clip where we talk about what changed between the first album and the second. Check this out.
I think part of what you're hearing is you're talking about guys that, not all of them, but 90% of them know each other, have known each other. There's the utmost respect going on. And just a certain, I think, and it's not going to be in any liner notes and it's not going to be in the speakers, but there's a certain cohesiveness and everybody buying in, kind of like a sports team where everybody buys into the same thing and everybody's pushing in the same direction. That wasn't on the first record. And I think that's part of what you're hearing as well. I think part of what you're hearing too is just the songwriting and Nick's different ideas on the guitar that took it in a little bit of a more aggressive direction too. It's not like it was the same guitar and all of a sudden Jimmy plays and whoa, there we go, we're heavy. It has a lot to do with Nick too.
I will tell you, this is also the first record I've ever done where I went back in and re-recorded my guitars after the drums were done, because there's stuff that Mark had mentioned earlier that Ray will sort of perform to the drums, and Simone did the same thing. Some of the riffs are directly reflective of what Mark did on the drums and tightening them up. And frankly, it was kind of exciting. It's hard to get really thrilled about redoing stuff you've already done, but it was, you could tell the payoff was there, and it was like very energizing to do that. So everybody's sort of rowing together and doing their best to make the song as best as they could.
So we talked about the vibe of the album. And there are some differences. I'll tell you one of the most unsung differences from this album from the last one. And it's somebody that, of course, plays an instrument that rarely gets recognized. And that would be Jimmy Waldo, his keyboard sound, which has kind of a more aggressive tone to it. Folks, that added so much to the music. It really did. And Mark Zonder talks about that. Check out this clip from the interview that we just did. And Jimmy Waldo obviously playing the keys. Jimmy Waldo from Alcatraz playing that. I thought that added a pretty cool element to the album, to be honest.
Well, I think the keyboards on the first album were very proggy. Genesis, Yes. I mean, Viv was a huge Yes fan. kind
Yeah.
of thin, light. It worked. It was fine, but it didn't add any power and it didn't add any quote aggressiveness. I actually think Jimmy and the keyboards are kind of the unsung hero of this album that won't get the attention like a lead guitar player or a lead singer will get.
Right.
And you hit it right on the head. There's one thing to have a guitar sound that's distorted, and that's cool. But when you mix it up the way Deep Purple and Rainbow did, when the guitar and the key are together,
Mhm.
there's just a certain sound that a lot of people don't have anymore. And those kind of parts, really give this album a lot more edge without being like over the top distorted guitar and getting kind of stupid with it. It adds a great flavor to it that really helps the direction.
So that's Mark Zonder, Nick talking about Jimmy Waldo being in the band A through Z. So the artwork is cool. There's definitely, again, Hugh Syme did a phenomenal job on the artwork. But generally speaking, it's a more refined album. One of the things that they did is they approached this. They didn't care who wrote the song or who did what on the song. All they did was think of better ways to refine and make the song better. And I think the vibe that, these guys talked about, the difference between the first and the second album is that it was approached in a much different way. And when you listen to the first album, for example, it feels more like a project kind of thrown together. It didn't really feel as much like a band like this second album feels like. Like this feels like a band on this second album that feels like they've been playing together for decades. Like that is the feeling I ended up getting when I was listening to this record. And because of that, and because they had such great chemistry together, the songs just turned out great. I mean, I said the first album there wasn't a bad song, and I still stand by that. And there really isn't a bad song on this one. Not at all. Now I Walk Away, weirdly enough, is one of my favorite songs on it. A Wordless Prison has probably my favorite guitar solos on the album. Just an incredible track. Now, they've put videos out for The Remedy, I Am Numb, and Nothing Is Over. The Remedy is probably my favorite of the three videos that they've done, for this record. But I got to be honest, I got to give Mark Zonder a lot of credit for putting this together. I give him credit for just pulling out all the stops. I mean, he went top notch on everything, from the artwork to the group of musicians he helped put together to the merchandising of the album. Now, I don't know how much input he had on like the vinyl records and the designs and what they look like, but folks, if you look at the vinyl variants of this album, they are absolutely incredible. And then doing cool merchandise like selling autographed drum heads that have the album cover on the drum heads with the band's autographs on it. It's top quality. It really is that good. And interestingly enough, as much as I have followed the bands that Zonder has been in, I never really had him on my show or never really knew him that well until the first A to Z album came out. And it's one of those things when I look at it, like, man, I wish I would have interviewed this guy earlier in my radio life, but I guess better late than never. But generally speaking, folks, this album is a 10 out of 10. It is an album of the year candidate. And I got to give props, man. Mark Zonder being the guy to put a lot of this together. There were no shortcuts taken on this album at all. None. And I got to give them props for that. 10 out of 10. If you like progressive heavy metal, if you like AOR, it appeals to both people. Again, I think Ray Alder, one of the complaints was that Ray, he sounds like he's struggling a bit and that he's really not singing all these high notes. Well, folks, the songs, when you listen to them, they don't really require that. The one thing I've noticed about Ray's vocals over the years is he goes more for the melody than just singing high pitched and, high screams that he did on the No Exit album with Fate's Warning. And I think Ray's voice is a perfect fit for this music. So generally speaking, folks, 10 out of 10. If you have not checked this out, if you like prog metal, if you like AOR, if you like both, you're going to love this album. The reviews have been nothing but phenomenal on this. And everything from the logo to the merchandising to the artwork is top notch. So check that album out. I'm going to have songs in the show notes. I'll have a link to order the album for you. And let me know what you think about this record. Last topic of the day. And this is a rant. Folks, I don't know what it is. The Dave Mustaine and Metallica narrative has gotten old. Like, is anybody else sick of this? Are any of you sick of listening to this nonsense? It's like every time Dave does an interview, the interviewer is bringing up Metallica with Dave. And it just gets old after a while. So recently, looking through my timeline on social media, which sometimes I hate doing, but I do it for the sake of the show, I've seen nothing but reels and short videos of Dave Mustaine talking about Metallica on various interviews that the guy has done over the last year, maybe year or two. And they are the same tired stories we've heard over and over again. The U-Haul trip, being sent home on a Greyhound, Dave being the guy that helped write a lot of Metallica's music that made them successful, which is true. The fact that, Metallica, he says Metallica stole the Enter Sandman riff from a band called Excel. I mean, all of these stories, folks, we have heard this for decades. And it gets old. And I'm going to give you the two problems that I have with this topic constantly being brought up and flooding my social media. And I'm going to give you two problems I have with it. And folks, there are a lot of people that are just sick of hearing about it. I've been listening to heavy metal since 1991. This story, the Metallica Dave Mustaine saga, has been constantly thrown out there every single year. And you know what irritates me about it? You know what those two things are that irritate me about it? And that's kind of annoying? Is it takes focus off of two things. Number one, it takes focus off of how great Megadeth is and how much influence and impact Megadeth has had on so many people. Megadeth has had a phenomenal career. They have put out albums like, Dave Mustaine and company, they've put albums out such as Peace Sells, But Who's Buying, Rust in Peace, which are two albums that are considered some of the most influential albums in the history of heavy metal. They put out great stuff in the 90s, in my opinion, like Cryptic Writings and Countdown to Extinction and Euthanasia. Dave had the great comeback with The System Has Failed. Dave has overcome addiction. Dave's overcome a lot of obstacles and has had a phenomenal musical career. And every time he goes and does an interview, the interviewer wants to talk about the early part of his career that was a small fraction of it, the Dave Mustaine Metallica saga. Now, folks, we know Dave Mustaine is one of the godfathers of thrash metal. He did help write a lot of Metallica's early music, and his music contributed to their success. And I'm going to get into Metallica here in a second. But it just irritates me that we keep bringing up the same topics over and over again. And we don't talk about how great Megadeth was or some of the intricacies that went behind a lot of these, that went into a lot of these albums, behind the scenes. Nobody wants to talk about that. And I think they should. Because ultimately, the man has made his mark. And his career didn't span the very short time he was part of Metallica. The guy has had a career in Megadeth going back about 40 years now. 40 plus years. And aside from 2 dud albums that Megadeth has put out, I Don't Like Risk or Super Collider, for the most part, I've enjoyed their albums. They're either decent to excellent. So it just takes focus off of what this guy has accomplished as a musician. Because we keep talking about something that is well documented and well known, and we keep regurgitating it and we keep beating a dead horse with it. You know, I've interviewed Dave Mustaine 3 times in my life, all on my radio show. I brought up Metallica once, and that was it. Actually, he brought them up. And it wasn't even him talking smack about him. I don't remember exactly what that question was, but we were talking about songs that he wrote in the early days of Megadeth and song ideas and stuff. And he brought up, I don't remember what song it was. I'd like to see Set the World Afire. He was talking about writing the lyrics for that on the Greyhound bus ride, because we were talking about the album So Far, So Good, So What. But there's so many intricacies behind the making of all these great Megadeth albums. I mean, I would love to hear Dave talk about that instead of the same regurgitated Metallica nonsense that keeps getting brought up to him. The second thing, and the second major problem I have with this, is it also takes focus off of how well Metallica has marketed themselves, conducted their business, and how good of a job they've done in maintaining their relevancy, not only in the heavy metal world, obviously being the biggest heavy metal band of all time, but in the music world in general. So yeah, did Dave contribute to their early albums? Absolutely. And many people, including myself, will say that the early Metallica stuff is probably their best material. But folks, the band still worked their ass off to be successful and to be the biggest heavy metal band in the world and to be charting up there with some of the biggest pop artists in the world. That is what they've done. And it takes focus because we're focusing too much on the early stuff, and we're not giving Metallica credit for what they've done with their career post Dave Mustaine being in the band. The awesome Super Deluxe box sets they are putting out. So overall, I think that it takes focus off of these things to keep bringing up and beating a dead horse with this subject, to keep asking. And I don't blame Dave Mustaine. I blame the interviewers. Because Dave Mustaine's going to answer whatever question you give him. But these people keep bringing this nonsense up. And it gets irritating and it gets annoying. Now, some of you have asked me this question. Do I like the Metallica discography better, or do I like the Megadeth discography better? Admittedly, as a whole, I like the Megadeth discography better. And here's how I look at both of them. So with Megadeth, as I said before, I like pretty much all of their albums but 2. I didn't care for Risk, obviously. Most people didn't like that album. And I didn't like the album Super Collider at all. It wasn't that it was like terrible, but it kind of bored me to tears. And I was not into that record at all. Other than that, I think Megadeth has put out an above average to excellent album every single album cycle. Now, a lot of you may disagree with me on that. Some of you might say, oh, I don't like anything after Rust in Peace or whatnot. I don't care. That's fine. This is my own personal preference. With Metallica, it's different for me. The first 5 Metallica albums, Kill 'Em All Through the Black album, I think are flawless. They're gold. They are incredible records. I'd put them up against anything any other heavy metal band has put out. And then the rest of their discography is extremely hit or miss. It's either mediocre or it just isn't very good. So like Load and Reload, actually, those aren't terrible records. There's a lot of filler on them. I think if you took the best songs off of both of those albums, you would have had a very good rock album. I don't hate those albums like most of the old school Metallica fans hate them. I think Saint Anger is terrible. I'm not a fan of the S&M albums, those live records with like the orchestra. I don't think they did a very good job with that compared to a lot of other bands. I don't like Death Magnetic. I thought the production sucked, and the master, obviously, being a victim of the loudness wars, I don't think that album was very good. Hardware to Self-Destruct was decent. And then the last album they came out with, that one actually was above average. But basically, for me, everything after the Black Album is basically mediocre, or I just don't like it. I like more Megadeth albums than I do Metallica records. Now, to their credit, Metallica has done an amazing job at these reissues. They have set the gold standard for box sets. And not only that, but the other cool thing I like about Metallica, this is something people don't talk too much about. They obviously record all of the shows now that they play, and they release those shows. You can buy those shows on CD from their web shop on their website. Hey everybody, it's Tony here from the Metal Command Podcast. I appreciate you watching this program, and if you want to see more of what I offer on this show, please by all means hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, follow me on any other social media outlet that you see this program, and again, I appreciate all of your support.